growth was invented during the war because prior to that, societies produced things, circulated what they produced. There were economies everywhere, what I call the economy and the art of living. But the problem is that, if I grow food and the community uses it or the region uses it, then it's generating lots of food, but it's not generating profits. And growth was created to extract from nature and society in order to finance the war. It was literally created for the war. That's how you got more and more money for buying fighter jets, warships, build bigger armies. Big debate these days about how much money there is for the wars, and there's no money to sustain society right now. And a friend of mine, she was the youngest MP in New Zealand, and she said, how is it that every time we ask for money for women's welfare, children's welfare, we are told there isn't money for the budget? Then she couldn't figure out how come they want a warship, there's money. When we want a new kindergarten, there's no money. So she traced all the way the accounting system and went all the way to the UN. And the UN system of account counts basically the thing that goes into the GDP and GNP as if you produce what you consume, you don't produce. So your production is turned into inactivity. And that's how self-sufficient economies, local economies, circular economies were made to disappear. Now that you treat them as not producing, all the concessions go to the extractive economy. And slowly, you're unproductive, you're primitive, you're backward, all those words get started. In India, we made a law for the tribal communities making their own decisions. It's a law on self-rule. And it got passed. And then the community started to use this when the mining corporations came with globalization. Communities will sit and decide, circles like this, what it'll do, what it'll mean, this much money will come, this much forest will go. Our link with our ancestors will go, because these stones of our ancestors are conversations with our ancestors will go. Our culture will go. And one after the other, huge investment, they say, no, we don't want it. Because we lose everything that is us. We get money, but we don't have anything that shapes us. The mining giant contributes to growth. Because they're calculating growth in a certain way, which basically is how much you extract, not how you leave systems thriving. And that's why in many parts of the world, there's a total shift from this gross national product and gross domestic product. Bhutan, I have advised the government of Bhutan for very long. Bhutan shed it. When the king came back from a big conference, he was asked, now that Bhutan is opening up, what's going to be your development model? And he said, we're not going to chase growth. Because I see what growth, economic growth has taken place. People are depressed, people are sick, people are alcoholics, people are drug addicts. I want a happy society. And so they evolved, instead of gross national product, they evolved gross national happiness. And the whole planning commission calculates indicators of happiness, not indicators of money. And the indicators of happiness are how good are your forests? How healthy are your children? How looked after are your elderly? How vibrant is your culture? Because if that's all working together, you'll have a happy society. So I just want to, use a little bit of time to say, especially when we ask questions, what should I do? What should I be doing? Take something simple, like the issue of food and health on the one side, and the issue of climate. Now, I've always connected these two. We've drilled 600 million years of nature's fossilization. Organic matter was fossilized and turned into coal in some places, was turned into oil in other places, was turned into gas in other places. But the Earth did this over 600 million years. And every year, 20 million years of worth is being pulled out and burnt. And that's why you're piling into the atmosphere far more than the Earth's systems can circulate. You know, the Earth has total capacity to take all the emissions of all kinds from living systems, which are called biogenic cycles, and reabsorb them. And that's why even for the cow is part of a biogenic cycle, you know, where the rubbish that's being, you know, especially by the Bill Gates. I'm not going to believe in Mr. Bill Gates' non-science, you know. For me, the most ridiculous is the 4 stomachs of the cow are the reason of the methane problem. And then the solution is kill the cows, kill the cows, kill the cows. Or another one of his solutions is genetically engineer the feed even more. The cow and her gut, that nature is the problem. So you've got to control and modify nature. And the dominant system is looking for how do you keep doing things in the same way, changing one little here and one little bit there. And that's why you're sticking to consumptive energy, yeah? And then seeing, okay, how will we have same amount of extraction for automobiles, build more highways, now have electric cars. And everyone who has been interviewed on electric cars says, and where does your energy come from? Oh, a coal-fired power plant. But you're riding your electric car. You think you're riding it on no energy at all. You forget to think in links and chains. But on the reality is this, that I grow plants. The more biodiversity there is, the more photosynthesis there is, the more photosynthesis there is, the more the carbon dioxide gets pulled out of the atmosphere, gives us more food, and reduces your climate problem at the same time. Same action. You know, we keep thinking we do different actions for climate and different actions for food. But it's the same action in terms of our relationship to the earth. Then the potential is there that even 10% farms becoming biodynamic or organic or permaculture or forests in 10 years, 10% farms in 10 years can totally meet that 1.5 degree target and go beyond. What we say in this room, we say without someone else is controlling our dialogue. But the digital system by its very nature is a control mechanism. We get offered the next step of enslavement as the next step of liberation. So when the farmers were pushed into using Roundup, they were told, you will be free, you know, of having to make compost. It's dirty. So we are constantly made to think this is for our good. When the slaves of Africa were captured for the cotton plantations, they knew they're slaves and they know they're captured. They never said, oh, they're doing it for our good. They never had that illusion. As always, we are always told, it's for your benefit. You know, it's so convenient. And for me, I measure convenience from a simple reality of I'm a biological being in a living world. What are the basic things I should do to stay healthy, to stay in relationship? And when my convenience is constant alienation, that's not convenience anymore. It's separation. It's so convenient. When you'll go home, your fridge will already be stacked with the things that were running out. And now we have smart cities, smart fridges, smart cars, smart everything. But these are basically surveillance systems. And within this world, your truth is, do not give up your earth being. Live your fullness as members of an earth community. And therefore, through that, Also remember how creative you are. Because part of this whole process, including industrialism, is making you forget that you're a creative being. You know, you're a pusher of a button in a factory. When a dominant system wants to have control and profits, they always make a technological path look inevitable. Yeah? Right now, we are constantly told everything will be run on AI. 99% humanity will be useless. Well, 99% humanity can today say we will not be useless. We will create our lives, we'll create our communities, we'll create our future. And just that will is enough. And you will find in yourself, this is my path. So I wish you all the best for your future.